Good morning, this is Katrina the Good with the Phenomenon Encountered Radio Network. And this morning I'm going to discuss putting the craft back into witchcraft. I myself personally am a solitary cottage witch. One thing that I have learned as a cottage witch is that when I'm cultivating my own herbs, or if I'm creating with my own two hands my own items to go into my spell work, that my magic overall is a lot more potent, it is a lot more effective, and overall better quality. And I found that's actually the case because even before I officially begin my spell work, whether it be during the full moon, the waning moon, whenever I'm doing my spell, that's actually, I'm already putting my intent, my energy, my will into my spell work when I'm creating something that I'm going to use in my spell, or cultivating something that I'm going to be using in my spell. So it's almost like a build-up, an energy build-up, and it's getting there, and by the time I'm ready for my spell, it's already high energy, high effectiveness. It's very exciting. It works quite well. One thing that I have incorporated into my spell work that I do quite often is my love for knitting and crocheting. Those are two hobbies that I have on my own already that I'm very passionate about. So when I was able to learn how to incorporate that into my spell work, it was very exciting for me. And I even created a little blessing for my knitting needles that I would like to share with you. And if you'd like to use this as well, please feel free to do so. This is my personal Book of Shadows. I'm quite fond of it. Stitch by stitch and knot by knot, I bless the needles to shroud in perfect protection, in perfect balance, in perfect white light. For the greatest good, so shall it be. It's quite simple blessing that I use before I start any spell work that I'm going to be knitting. Not only do I do it just because it makes my spell more effective, but I also have learned to treat my needles and treat my hooks and my yarn as like I would any other magical tool, like I would any candle, any crystals, any pentacles. Just use them as you would any other magical item because they are magical and they are very important into your spell work. And along with respecting them as magical items, as with anything before you start any magic work with any tools, of course you always have to smudge them. So my knitting needles do get smudged, and as does my yarn, before I use it for any spell work. And I'm actually going to do a little tutorial on how to make a little magical bag for sachets or any other thing that you need a little bag for in your spell work. One thing also about me is I'm very frugal. So I do my utmost to save money and pinch pennies whenever I can. And how I've done that in the past with this is I've actually used chopsticks that I get from my Chinese food store for free, and that's a very effective knitting needles when you're making little bags. It's very effective. And as for my yarns, I've even used in the past the little butcher's twine that you can get in your local grocery store for a couple dollars, and I like that, using that as well, because usually those are natural fibers like cotton and things like that. So those are just some helpful tips right there. If you want to make your own bag for your spell work and you want to stretch out your dollar, that is one way to do so. But what actually for this tutorial that I'm going to do is I'm going to use, first off, a 4.5 millimeter knitting needles. I would be using my chopsticks if I had any, because my little Boston Terrier Missy chewed it all up. So that's also a tip. Don't leave your chopsticks out when you have a little dog named Missy, because she will chew it up and leave a mess everywhere. And what I'm also going to be using is just standard twine. This is also made out of cotton. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and I'll be right back. Okay. To start our spell bag, we need to cast on 15 loops onto our knitting needle. How we're going to do that is I'll demonstrate on how to do a cast on and how to make the body and make the bag. So to start off with, at the beginning of yarn, we're going to make a simple slip knot. Just like that. Slide your first knitting needle through your slip knot and secure it. Don't make it too tight, otherwise you might have some difficulties working with your yarn, but just make it just so it's secure, but it is movable. With your second knitting needle, we are going to go through our loop that we made under the first knitting needle. Take your yarn you have off to the side, wrap around that second knitting needle and bring up your first knitting needle and over. You'll see that you have 2 loops on each needle. You're going to want this second loop over on your first knitting needle. So all you have to do to accomplish that is go under the loop from the second knitting needle and slide it on and secure it on your first knitting needle. You'll have 2 loops. We're going to cast on a total of 15 loops onto your knitting needle. That's about the standard size I make my bags for, my protection bags, for my sachets, and other magical purposes. I'll show you that again. We're going to go under that second loop that we made, under that first knitting needle, wrap your yarn around, bring up. So you have your 2 loops, 1 on each needle. Bring the first knitting needle under to bring it off your second knitting needle, and you should have 3 cast-ons on your first knitting needle. I'll continue that again. 1 under the first knitting needle, around, under, and take that loop off your second needle. I know I'm going a little slow. When I first started knitting, the casting on was the most difficult part for me to accomplish. That's why I'm just going a little slow, just in case anybody is not familiar with knitting or is brand new to knitting, be able to make their cast on. So we have 4 loops. This is going to be 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. And 15. And let's count how many loops we have on our first knitting needle to make sure that I counted correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Because I have the correct number of loops on my first hook. It does not look like a lot, but I promise it does stretch out. So we have our 15 cast-ons on our first knitting needle. So now we are ready to make the body of our spell bag. So we're just going to go under through the first loop and under the first knitting needle like we do with our cast-on, wrap around, and instead of transferring our loop to the first, back to the first knitting needle, we're actually going to just keep it on the second. We're just transferring these loops over to this second knitting needle. I'll show you that again. Under the first knitting needle, wrap around your yarn, and pop it right off. So we have 2 loops on our second knitting needle. continue to go slow so everyone can see what I am doing. Okay, that is completes our first row. Let me make sure that I did not drop any stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Good. So you can continue to count. Make sure you don't drop any stitches, because if you do, your work might have a tendency to kind of unravel, and we don't want that. So I will show you how to do this second. Go on to the second row, which is the same as we were doing before. We're just transferring the loops from one needle to the other. That is row 2. I'm actually going to stop this video and continue on until we have a total of 15 rows. Then I'll show you how to cast off.